Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and this is 3 Agatha Christie book reviews that are the next up in my Agatha Christie read-through project. These are 3 Poirot novels that were all written consecutively. So in this video, we are going to talk about Poirot in Court, Poirot at the Dentist, and Poirot on Holiday. First up, we have Sad Cyprus, which was published in 1940. This is a courtroom drama, not entirely, but the beginning and the end take place in a courtroom, which I find very interesting. This one has more proof of Agatha Christie's like or love of Shakespeare. I've been noticing that she will quote Shakespeare in her stories, and I don't always catch them because they're not always cited as Shakespeare. So if, for example, characters might quote for or whatever, but this one has a Shakespeare quote right at the beginning. Come away, death, and in sad Cyprus let me be laid. Fly away, breath, I am slain by a fair, cruel maid. My shroud of white stuck all with you, oh prepare it. My part of death no one so true did share it. And that is from Twelfth Night. Okay, so the prologue of Sad Cyprus opens in court. We are in the middle of a trial, and in the dock is Eleanor Carlisle. We meet Eleanor Carlisle, our main character. Eleanor Catherine Carlisle, you stand charged upon this indictment with the murder of Mary Gerard upon the 27th of July last. Are you guilty or not guilty? Eleanor Carlisle stood very straight, her head raised. It was a graceful head, the modeling of the bones sharp and well defined. The eyes were a deep, vivid blue, the hair black. The brows had been plucked to a faint, thin line. There was a silence, quite a notable silence. Sir Edwin Bulmer, counsel for the defense, felt a thrill of dismay. He thought, my God, she's going to plead guilty. She's lost her nerve. Eleanor Carlisle's lips parted. She said, not guilty. Okay, so we start with the prologue of her saying that she is not guilty in court, and then it goes back to the beginning of what happened, and we get the story of what happened, and then it ends at the trial again in court. So one interesting thing that I noticed is chapter 6 in this book is all letters, and I thought that was really, really interesting. So she Agatha Christie is telling her story, and then we get to chapter 6, and all of the information is in letter form in chapter 6, which I thought was really interesting. As far as Agatha Christie universe stuff goes, Dr. Lord is the doctor in this case. Eleanor has an aunt who was leaving everything to Eleanor and to Eleanor's fiance Roddy, and Dr. Lord and she was unwell, and Dr. Lord was her doctor. He's also the one who comes to Poirot and asks him for his help in this case. He says that he has heard Dr. Stillingfleet speak of Poirot, and we first meet Dr. Stillingfleet in the short story The Dream, which is in the Regatta Mystery short story collection from 1937. So I always like that when I find those things that connect people in the Agatha Christie universe. On page 102, we have Poirot saying, Hercule Poirot said, I do not approve of a murder. Which is great, but what's also entertaining is that he says that exact same line in the short story The Problem at Sea, which also was in the Regatta Mystery. And so I think it's awesome that he's put in these situations where he has to come out and state that he does not approve of murder. All right, and then I'm going to delve into some, a little bit of the spoilers here. So I'm going to put spoiler on the bottom of the screen in case you haven't read this one yet. I think that it is very interesting that there isn't a word said about the killer at the end. So, the Nurse Hopkins, is revealed to be the killer, and this comes out in the trial, but we don't learn anything of that. We don't learn of her getting arrested or anything because the focus is on Eleanor, and so we find, you know, the trial goes through to the very end, and the judge decrees that there is no case to be made and that Eleanor is not guilty. She is free to go. And then we get a little bit of a denouement, wrapping it up and discovering what happens to Eleanor. And so I find it fascinating that the killer is revealed, but then we get absolutely nothing about the killer. And I realized that this actually goes to further proof in my investigation into how Poirot is a truth teller, because he's a truth teller. What was important was that Eleanor is found not guilty and released, and the real murderer is named, and that's all that matters, because that's the truth. And so we don't hear anything about Nurse Hopkins. Like, the only thing is that when that comes out that she is the killer, there's a line that she is not seen in the courtroom, that she has left. But we don't get anything of it. We don't get to hear that the police have arrested her and that she's gone to trial or is in jail or anything. Like, she's just gone from the story because she's not what's important. What's important is that Eleanor is shown to be innocent, and you know, and that Dr. Lord, who has fallen in love with her, needs to go and tell her that he loves her. And so I just thought that was an interesting way to end it, and also further proof that what's important for Poirot is the truth, that the truth is spoken. Okay, so Sad Cyprus, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. We very rarely get courtroom scenes in Agatha Christie's, and so I thought that was really entertaining. This one had good characters, a really good development of the plot, good clues and red herrings, and classic Agatha Christie. So yeah, Sad Cyprus, this was a good read. Next up is The Patriotic Murders from 1941. This was originally published as 1-2 Buckle My Shoe. It was also published as An Overdose of Death. This is one of Agatha Christie's that are focused on nursery rhymes. She seemed to really enjoy using a nursery rhyme to develop her plot from. So that happened in And Then There Were None, and in many more coming up. And so in this one, 1-2 Buckle My Shoe, each chapter has a line from that rhyme as the title, and the entire rhyme is given at the beginning of the book. So in this story, Poirot goes to the dentist, and you learn, of course, that like a lot of people in that time period, and still today, he's nervous about going to the dentist. He goes to see Henry Morley, and Poirot discovers afterwards from Inspector Japp that Morley is found shot in his office shortly after Poirot's appointment. So it becomes important to Poirot to remember who was in the waiting room, who did he see coming in and going out of the dentist's office while he was there. There's some great character names in this one that I loved. Mr. Amberiotis, Miss Sainsbury Seal, and Mr. Alistair Blunt. So yeah, I liked the names in this one. This one definitely also has a Shakespeare quote. On page 108, we have Japp. So they're discussing somebody. Poirot and Japp are discussing somebody, Mrs. Chapman. Poirot asked, "What about Mrs. Chapman?" "What indeed? Who is Sylvia?" Her name's Sylvia, by the way. "What is she?" "One thing is certain, Sylvia, or Sylvia's friends, murdered the lady and put her in the box." So there is multiple murders in this story, classically, but who is Sylvia? What is she? Is a quote from the Two Gentlemen of Verona. So there is a lot in this story about finance, the Prime Minister, the Home Office, the Foreign Office, and the Secret Service. So we delve a little bit into that world in this story. I liked that Poirot had an aha moment in a church service where he realizes that he has fallen into a trap. That was a really entertaining part of the story. So everybody is singing, and because of the words of the songs, he has this aha moment where he realizes that a trap has been laid for him, that it's been designed for him to be heading in a certain direction, and he's fallen into that trap. So they are singing the hymn, and he is thinking, and he's singing along, and they sing, "The proud have laid a snare for me and spread a net with cords, yea, and set traps in my way. His mouth remained open. He saw it, saw clearly the trap into which he had so nearly fallen. A snare cunningly laid, a net with cords, a pit open at his feet, dug carefully so that he should fall into it. Like a man in a trance, Hercule Poirot remained, mouth open, staring into space." So yeah, I thought that was good. As far as the Agatha Christie universe goes, this was great. There was a mention of Countess Vera Rozikoff, and the mention of her is so fascinating. So we first meet Countess Vera in The Big Four from 1927, and she turns out to be a jewel thief in that book. But what's great is that Poirot has a bit of an admiration for her, and he lets her go. Like, he lets her get away with her theft. But the mention of her is very interesting. So on page 175, he's walking through the park. It was a lovely summer's day, and Poirot looked indulgently on courting nursemaids and their swains, laughing and giggling while their chubby charges profited by nurses' inattention. Dogs barked and romped, little boys sailed boats, and under nearly every tree was a couple sitting close together. They were chic, these little London girls. They wore their tawdry clothes with an air. Their figures, however, he considered lamentably deficient. Where were the rich curves, the voluptuous lines that had formerly delighted the eye of an admirer? He, Hercule Poirot, remembered women, one woman in particular. What a sumptuous creature, a bird of paradise, a Venus. What woman was there among these pretty chits nowadays who could hold a candle to Countess Vera Rozikoff? A genuine Russian aristocrat, an aristocrat to her fingertips, and also, he remembered, a most accomplished thief, one of those natural geniuses. I just thought that was so fascinating, because we rarely get a glimpse into Poirot's love life, and I thought it was so fascinating. The way that he describes her totally made me think of Irene Adler in Sherlock Holmes, the woman. And because quite often Poirot is compared to Sherlock Holmes in this way, and yet I think that the Countess Vera Rozikoff is his Irene Adler, a woman that he has great admiration for, who is intelligent, and she didn't beat him like Irene Adler with Sherlock Holmes, but their relationships are very similar. So yeah, that was very, very interesting. And then there is also a comment again about truth. So I've been discovering as I read more of Poirot stories that as a detective, he is very much a truth seeker. And that came out again in this story on page 184. Poirot says, "I do not take sides. I am on the side only of the truth." So yeah, that was good. Yeah, this one again was a really solid Poirot, very entertaining. And then my favorite though of the three is Evil Under the Sun, and this was also published in 1941. And I absolutely love the edition that I have of this. I love the way it's designed. I love the font. So this is a pocketbook edition from 1963. It has a cast of characters in it that that is great. I always find that very helpful. So Poirot is on holiday. He is staying at the Jolly Roger Hotel on Smuggler's Island, Leathercombe Bay, which is just off the coast of Devon and Cornwall. And so he is staying at this hotel, and so you meet some of the other guests that are also staying at this hotel. And one of them is Arlena Marshall. And Arlena Marshall is an actress, a good-looking woman who turns men's heads and appears to like it. She is there with her husband and her stepdaughter. Another couple that is there is Mr. and Mrs. Redfern, and Mr. Patrick Redfern has his head turned by Arlena Marshall, and the rest of the guests on the island are talking about it because it's so noticeable. And then Arlena is found strangled on a secluded beach in Pixie's Cove, I think. And so, of course, Poirot must investigate. There is a reference to the events of Death on the Nile from 1937. Mrs. Gardner heard about Poirot through Cornelia Robson, and Cornelia Robson was a character in Death on the Nile. So what was funny is Cornelia Robson is an American, and Mr. and Mrs. Gardner are also Americans. And I've noticed in the past that very often you will get different American characters who meet each other or know each other, and one or the other of them has heard of Poirot, and so you almost get this impression that all Americans know each other. Because because why does Mrs. Gardner know Miss Robson? But anyway, so that's another piece of the universe segment. Here is a great quote that I liked. "It is romantic, yes," agreed Hercule Poirot. "It is peaceful. The sun shines, the sea is blue, but you forget, Miss Brewster, there is evil everywhere under the sun." And that's from page 8. There is a mention on page 26 that Poirot is recounting the story to Hastings, which I thought was interesting. So at this point in time, Hastings is still over in Argentina. We haven't seen Hastings around for a while. So here it is. "In the recess adjoining, on the seat there, Hercule Poirot sat and shook his head sorrowfully. Some people might have scrupulously removed themselves from earshot of a private conversation, but not Hercule Poirot. He had no scruples of that kind. Besides, as he explained to his friend Hastings at a later date, it is a question of murder." Hastings said, staring, "But the murder hadn't happened then." Hercule Poirot sighed. He said, "But already, mon cher, it was very clearly indicated." "Then why didn't you stop it?" And Hercule Poirot, with a sigh, said, as he had said once before in Egypt, that if a person is determined to commit murder, it is not easy to prevent them. He does not blame himself for what happened. It was, according to him, inevitable. So I thought I liked that little snippet there that he is recounting this story to Hastings at some point when Hastings comes back for a visit. So I love that she brings Hastings back into the story even though he is far away. And I also love that she is this connection to the events from Death on the Nile, because he said that in Death on the Nile too, that he couldn't prevent a murder that he saw coming. So the chief constable plays a part in this story. His name is Colonel Weston, and he refers to that business at St. Lou, and that's from Peril at End House in 1932. So we've met Colonel Weston before in that story. He knows Poirot. And then on page 61, we get this great quote: "Murder springs 9 times out of 10 out of the character and circumstances of the murdered person." So yeah, so that was really good. This one, again, I really enjoyed this one. This was my favorite of the 3. It just had a great setting, really good characters, plenty of suspects with plenty of motives. And again, the mechanics of how the murder worked were brilliant. And so again, this is a great example of the genius of plotting that Agatha Christie had. And so how she worked out who the killers were and how they did it was just great. And I really enjoyed this one. So this one's currently in my top 10 of favorite Agatha Christie's. We'll see if it stays there, because I still have, I think, 40 books to go in my read through. So yeah, so these are the 3 Agatha Christie's that I've read most recently. Have you read any of these 3? Which of these 3 is your favorite, if you've read them all? And so yeah, let's talk about them in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.